Good evening, everybody. And let's start with our motivation. So Shantideva talks about how rare and precious having the bodhicitta mind is, that people don't even think of wishing themselves the highest happiness, let alone wishing that for all other living beings. And when you think about it, it's true. Our idea of happiness is very small. Quite limited to the happiness of this life, and in particular, pleasure derived from the senses. And so let's lift our mind up out of that narrow view and wish ourselves the everlasting peace of nirvana, and then go beyond that and wish that for each and every living being. And then let's make that really the focal point of our life, the purpose of our life. And then with that motivation, we listen and share in the Dharma this evening.
I called from downstairs, and just like last time it worked fine. So I left it on, and I just pressed this on. So I'm going to go downstairs and see if I can hear.
Okay.
I don't understand that.
Okay. Okay, so we hope people online and people on the telephone can all hear us. Technology is uncertain, like death. Hello, Venerable Tarpa, we hear you. Okay, so we'll continue this evening with the Bodhisattva paths and grounds. And we're on the section where it's talking about Bodhisattva superiors. So superiors means Aryas, those who have realized emptiness directly. Okay, so just like when we were doing the fundamental vehicle, there's 3 parts to the explanation, the definitions, the divisions, and then the explanation of the meaning of the individual divisions. Okay, so let's look at the definitions. So the definition of a Bodhisattva Arya ground is a Bodhisattva Arya's exalted knower, which is affected by both the wisdom directly realizing emptiness and great compassion. Okay, so it's the mind of an Arya Bodhisattva, somebody who's realized emptiness directly. It's a wisdom consciousness. Exalted knower is Yeshi, that's your name. And it's affected by both the wisdom directly realizing emptiness and great compassion. Okay, so those 2 wings of the bird that we always have, the compassionate side and the wisdom side. So it's affected by both of those. Okay, and then the 2, a Bodhisattva Arya's ground and a Bodhisattva Arya's path, or an Arya Bodhisattva's ground and Arya Bodhisattva's path, are synonymous. And the definition of an ultimate ground of an Arya Bodhisattva is a Bodhisattva superior's non-conceptual exalted wisdom of meditative equipoise, whose entity is non-polluted and which is affected by great compassion, its accompanier. Okay, so that ultimate ground of the Bodhisattva, the ultimate bodhicitta of the Bodhisattva, it's a non-conceptual exalted wisdom, Okay? So perceiving emptiness without the means of a conceptual appearance. It's a wisdom of meditative equipoise, so it's a unity of serenity and insight. And its nature, that's what entity means, its nature is non-polluted, which means that it's not affected by ignorance or any of the latencies of ignorance. Okay, it's not polluted in any way. But it is affected by great compassion, which accompanies it. Yeah. So the great compassion is not a manifest mind, because when the Bodhisattva Arya is perceiving emptiness directly, only emptiness appears to that mind. Okay? So there's no manifest great compassion at that time. So they get into these big debates about, do these Aryas have compassion? Do they possess compassion? But what it all boils down to is that their compassion is latent. It's not a manifest mind. Okay? Because you really have to keep coming back to that. Only emptiness appears. So not all sentient beings, not enlightenment, not anything else, not an aspiration, only emptiness. But it's accompanied by bodhicitta and accompanied by great compassion, because before going into the meditative equipoise on the nature of reality, the Bodhisattva generated the bodhicitta motivation. Okay? So that's what it means when it says that the bodhicitta accompanies it. It's conjoined, it's there, it's what motivated the thing, but it's not manifest at that moment. Okay? Right. Now, at least you can show your head, not your tush, to the audience.
What does it mean to say that it's not polluted?
Yeah, but not polluted here means that it's not affected by ignorance, and it's not affected by the latencies of ignorance. So that mind is something completely pure. Okay, now you're going to go, but wait a minute, I thought it was only the Buddha's mind that's not affected by ignorance and the latency of ignorance. Okay, well, these Aryas' mind, when they're in meditative equipoise on emptiness, is not affected by those two. But the person still has them. Okay? And so, there's that mind doesn't have any negative karma attached to it. But that person may still have some negative karma. They may still have some afflictions. Okay? So you know how when we talk about what is it that is the conveyor of the karma from one life to the next. This is one reason why we say it's the mere I. Why we don't say it's the mind stream or the mental consciousness, because this mind of an Arya Bodhisattva is completely uncontaminated. So you can't say that it, is what passes on the negative karma or any kind of karma for samsara. Okay? So that's why you say it's the mere person that's labeled. That's merely labeled, that is what, conveys the karma in these kinds of situations. Yeah, but then of course we want to grab onto that mere person, but it's merely labeled, so you can't grab onto it. Okay? When I was in Missoula this last weekend, Ryder and Naomi's baby was sitting on my lap for part of the teachings. So I was holding the baby with one hand and, doing something with the notes in the other. And tonight it's my tree. Okay, so the text says, moreover, although the exalted wisdom of meditative equipoise of Arya Bodhisattvas, and Oh, yes, thank you. Okay, moreover, Chandakirti's auto-commentary on the supplement to Nagarjuna's treatise on the Middle Way says, when just the non-contaminated wisdom of bodhisattvas, which is affected by compassion and so forth, is divided into parts, they attain the name grounds because of serving as basis for good qualities. Okay, so this non-contaminated wisdom of bodhisattvas, I mean, the wisdom realizing emptiness is simply the wisdom realizing emptiness. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and it's affected by compassion. But here it's being divided into different parts. Now, how do you divide the wisdom realizing emptiness, which is a mind that realizes the same emptiness, you know, all the way up from path of seeing to the path of no more learning? How do you divide that into parts? Okay, so we're going to come to that. Yeah, but they attain the name grounds because of serving as basis for good qualities. So that wisdom realizing emptiness serves as the basis for different good qualities that those bodhisattvas have. And as we're going to see in the next paragraph, because of the increase of these good qualities, and that wisdom is acting as its basis, then that wisdom is divided into the different grounds, the 10 grounds. Okay? But it's not divided into the 10 grounds in terms of the object it realizes, because it all realizes emptiness. Okay? And it all perceives emptiness directly. So even though it's that ultimate knower that's completely immersed in emptiness, that doesn't see anything else, it still is divided into grounds on the basis of the qualities that the bodhisattvas display in their post-meditation time. Okay? So it says, moreover, although the exalted wisdom of meditative equipoise of Arya bodhisattvas and the exalted wisdom of meditative equipoise of fundamental vehicle superiors are similar, of Aryas in the fundamental vehicle, are similar in realizing reality directly without being polluted by predispositions or latencies of ignorance. The difference of whether or not they are posited as an ultimate Mahayana ground is through the force of their being or not being under the influence of, this is one sentence. So I'm just going to keep going and then we'll go back. Okay? Being under the influence of great compassion and having or not having capacities such as the 12 sets of 100 qualities and so forth. Okay, we got a period in here. He could have put and continued with the next phrase. Okay, so this meditative equipoise of the Aryas of the fundamental vehicle, who are working only for their own liberation, and the Bodhisattva Aryas, who are seeking full enlightenment, they're similar in that they are both realizing reality directly. Okay, and they're also without the pollution of the latencies of ignorance. Okay, so they aren't polluted by, let alone ignorance, and its seeds by the latency of ignorance. They aren't polluted by that. Okay, so you'd think, well, wait a minute, if they're both the same in that way, how are you dividing them? How are they separate? Yeah?
Motivation.
Yeah, I mean the motivation, but that, you know, and that motivation is what propelled them. But in that very mind state, you know, if you look just at that mind perceiving emptiness directly that's unpolluted, they're exactly the same in that way. However, according to the motivation that propelled that, they're different, and according to the way in which they act as the basis for good grounds, for other qualities, they're different. And there is another difference we're going to come to too, you know, in terms of how many, how they use different kinds of reasonings to realize emptiness. Okay, but when you think, I'm bringing this up because if you think about, the wisdom that directly realizes emptiness non-conceptually, that's just it. Yeah. So how, and there's nothing, no conventional appearances. So how are you dividing that kind of thing into grounds? And especially when it's a non-dual wisdom, there's no appearance of subject and object. How do you divide that into different parts? Okay, so it's challenging us that way. So now we're going to hear about how it is that it gets divided into different parts. Okay, so one way in which they are divided into parts is whether or not they are posited, the difference of whether or not they are posited as ultimate Mahayana grounds. Okay, so are they ultimate Mahayana grounds, or are they the grounds of a fundamental vehicle person? Okay, so how you're going to posit that is through the force of their being or not being under the influence of, first of all, great compassion. Okay, and so in terms of the fundamental vehicle, the practitioners who are realizing emptiness, their wisdom realizing emptiness isn't accompanied by great compassion. It's not under the influence of great compassion because they're looking simply for their own liberation. Whereas the Bodhisattvas, the whole reason they're practicing the entire path is for the benefit of all living beings and to attain enlightenment for that reason. So their wisdom realizing emptiness is under the influence of that great compassion. So that's one way they're different, okay? And, under the influence of great compassion and having or not having the capacities, such as the 12 sets of 100 qualities, okay? So we're going to get into this thing of the 12 sets of 100 qualities because Bodhisattvas have these 12 kinds of characteristics that come in sets of hundreds, and as you go up, as the level of the bhumis, the level of the grounds grow up, so does the number of these sets. The number is, there's always 12 sets, but the number that those sets of 100 qualities are multiplied by a certain number. Put it that way. So it could be, instead of seeing 100 Buddha lands, you see 1,000 Buddha lands or 1,000,000 Buddha lands. So in that way, okay? Whereas in fundamental vehicle, you don't see any Buddha lands because they don't have these 12 characteristics. Okay, so that's one way that they're differentiated. Not only that, okay, not only in terms of the great compassion and in terms of the 12 sets of 100 qualities, but there is said to be a very great difference with respect to directly realizing or not realizing suchness, from having made the mind vast or not, having made it vast with respect to the meaning of the profound emptiness by way of training in limitless numbers of reasonings on the meaning of suchness, that is to say, the two selflessnesses at the time of the paths of accumulation and preparation. That was also one sentence. Okay? So, not only are they differentiated from the Mahayana superior grounds, from the fundamental vehicle superior Arya grounds, but by compassion and by these sets of 12 qualities, the 12 sets of 100 qualities, but also because the Bodhisattvas, their understanding of emptiness becomes very vast because they use many, many different reasonings to understand emptiness. Whereas the practitioners in the fundamental vehicle, they usually just use one reasoning and they realize emptiness and that's it. Whereas the Bodhisattvas use many, many different reasonings. And so you'll see this when you really get into studying the middle way, because most people here are pretty familiar with the 4-point analysis, okay? But then Nagarjuna can speak of it in terms of, not just seeing are things the same, the self, for example, same as the aggregates are different from the aggregates. But Nagarjuna uses 5 different ways. It's not just those 2. Chantakirti uses 7 different ways to test the relationship between the aggregates and the self. And then Nagarjuna uses this one of the diamond slivers, or production from the 4 extremes. So whether something is produced by self, other, both, or causelessly. That's the first verse to his treatise on the middle way. Very famous verse. Yeah, so there's that refutation. Then there's another one about whether a cause produces a result that is existent, non-existent, both, or neither. Then there's the reasoning of dependent arising. So there's all these different reasonings that bodhisattvas use to understand emptiness. So that makes, even though the emptiness they're realizing is the same as in the fundamental vehicle, the kind of quality or the way they realize it is really expansive because they've used all these different reasonings. Okay, so that's another way that the Mahayana and the fundamental vehicle are different. Okay, because so we see our author here is really, and you see this a lot, trying to make the difference between if you practice fundamental vehicle, this is what you're doing, and if you practice Mahayana, this is what you're doing, in an effort to show us the value of the Mahayana teachings. Yeah, and the value, not just the Mahayana teachings, but actually the value of working for full awakening for the benefit of sentient beings, and how that's different from just seeking our own liberation. Okay, so this comes as a point again and again and again and again. And so it must be because it's very easy to want our own liberation and forget about everybody else. Isn't it? If it wasn't easy to do that, they wouldn't keep hammering into us the benefits of the Mahayana. Okay, and particularly the result of the Mahayana. Okay? So, the wisdom of meditative equipoise on emptiness of a bodhisattva and of a hearer and of a solitary realizer, they're all similar in that they all non-conceptually perceive emptiness, and they're all free from the latencies of ignorance. Okay, so they're all similar in that way. However, the wisdom of the Arya Bodhisattva is called the Bodhisattva ground, while that wisdom of the hearers and solitary realizers is not called the Bodhisattva ground. And that's due to several distinguishing features of the Bodhisattva ground. So first, an Arya Bodhisattva's wisdom is conjoined with great compassion, and that bodhicitta possesses these 12 special characteristics, which we'll get into. Okay? And then in addition, the Arya Bodhisattva's wisdom, directly realizing emptiness, arises from having meditated on emptiness during the passive accumulation and of preparation, using a very wide variety of reasonings to get at the meaning of emptiness. Okay? Got that? So now the divisions. So these are the divisions of the grounds of the Bodhisattva superiors. So there, yeah?
There's one we're going to answer the question how you can divide the wisdom realizing emptiness into parts. Am I missing?
Yeah, well that's what I was saying. How you divide it into parts is whether, on the basis of how it acts as the basis of these good qualities. Okay, actually that's what we're coming into right now, okay? Because when it talks about divisions, the first one is the divisions of grounds of the Bodhisattva Aryas. This is going to talk about how we divide it into different grounds. Okay, so there are 10 grounds because there are these 10. That's a good reason. There's 10 because there's 10. Okay, so the first is called the very joyful. These are the names of the Bodhisattva grounds. And the second, the stainless. The third is called the luminous or the radiant. Oh, no, the luminous. And the fourth is called the radiant. The fifth is called the difficult to overcome. The sixth is called the manifest. The seventh is called the gone afar. The eighth is the immovable. The ninth is good intelligence. And the 10th is the cloud of Dharma. Okay, so as we go through these 10 grounds, then we'll get the etymology of why they're called by these different names. But the names kind of, they have a reason that has to do with the speciality of each of those grounds. So moreover, with regard to the division into the 10 grounds, there is a division due to the enhancement of good qualities on latter levels over former levels. Okay, so these are the features of, so here we're getting what the features are that are enhanced on the latter levels of the grounds, okay? So the first feature is the number of good qualities, those 12 sets of 100. So the number of good qualities increases more and more. Okay, then second is the feature of the majesty of power increasing higher and higher. The third is the feature of a surpassing mode of practicing the 10 far-reaching practices. Then the fourth is the feature of the mode of taking fruitional rebirths and so forth. Okay, so what this means, okay, the first one, the number of good qualities increasing higher and higher. So the 12 sets of good qualities, so the sets are things like seeing Buddhas, receiving their blessings, going to the Pure Lands, the length of life, how much of the past and future that Bodhisattva can see. So there's these 12 special characteristics. So the number of the 12, there's always 12, but the numbers within the 12 goes from 100 to 1,000 increase. So those increase as you go through the 10 bhumis. Okay? Then the second one is the feature of the majesty of power increasing higher and higher. So this means that each successive ground has greater power to purify the various levels of obscurations and defilements. Okay, so and in that way to be able to advance to the next higher path. So the first ground has the ability to eliminate the objects to be abandoned of the first ground, you know, that level of afflictions, but it doesn't have the power, the strength to eliminate the objects to be abandoned of the second ground or the third ground. Yeah?
Does the elimination of these negative qualities happen during meditative equipoise?
Yeah.
So all these things, like, is this something, these 10 grounds, they are going on during meditative equipoise?
Well, the 10 grounds, you know, they're defined as ultimate bodhicitta, as that wisdom realizing emptiness, you know, that's being divided. But they actually refer also to what that bodhisattva's doing in their post-meditation time. Okay.
And the difference between the Mahayana, this meditative equipoise of the Mahayana path and the fundamental realizer, it's not about what's going on during the meditative equipoise, but what's happening before and after?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. In terms of the motivation is different between fundamental vehicle and Mahayana, and then these qualities are different. You know, the way that the meditation was entered into, and in the sense of how many reasonings you've used to meditate on emptiness. Okay, whether you have great compassion or not. So those other qualities that are associated with that wisdom are what really makes the difference between the fundamental vehicle and the Mahayana. Okay? Okay, so then within the Mahayana, these different grounds, how you separate those out yeah, are the number of the qualities. And then the second one, the majesty of the power, then that talks about like how much strength that meditative equipoise has, so that it can eliminate different levels of defilements and push the practitioner so that they advance to the next ground. So even though, like all those 10 grounds, they all realize emptiness directly, okay, some of them can eliminate the obscurations to be abandoned by the 10th ground, but many of them can't. They can only eliminate the objects to be abandoned at the first ground or the second ground. Okay? Because after you realize emptiness directly, it's not like you get, you realize emptiness and then boom, all your defilements are completely gone. It feels like that when you're in the meditative equipoise, but when you come back, the defilements are there and you're still in the, karma's still kind of operating and all this other stuff's going on. Yeah, so you really need to work at that, realize that meditative equipoise to familiarize the mind with emptiness again and again and again, because emptiness is what removes all those different layers of obscurations and afflictions. Okay, so this is really important to understand, because some people think, you just sit down and then you realize emptiness directly and whammo, you've got it, you're completely awakened. And then they wonder why they have problems afterwards. And probably, lots of times people think whenever they have any kind of unusual experience, they must be realizing emptiness. Yeah, well, that's not so either. We can have lots of different feelings that are unusual, or feelings of not being ourself, or being, if people think, oh, they have an out-of-body experience, that's realizing emptiness. That's not, so you have to really know what it is that's going to cleanse the mind, and what it is we're looking for in our meditation, yeah, and what to expect. Mm-hmm. I think that's why Jack called that book, what was it, After the Ecstasy, the Laundry? Yeah, because, some people, I don't know if they realize emptiness or not, but they have some kind of experience, and then afterwards, I'm still needy, I'm still complaining, I'm still lonely, Why is that? I had this fantastic meditative experience. How come I still have these problems? Yeah, well, when you think that our mind's been under the influence of ignorance and all these afflictions since beginningless time, what makes us think that one moment of seeing reality is going to eliminate all of that habit energy forever? Yeah, it's going to take time to cleanse. Okay, so that's why they often use the analogy of a very dirty piece of cloth. The first time you wash it, the gross dirt comes out, and the second time a little bit more, and then, like that. Okay, so the number of good qualities, the feature of the majesty of power, okay, so strength of being able to eliminate afflictions and move you on to the next ground. The third one is the feature of a surpassing mode of practicing the 10 far-reaching practices. So each ground has its own surpassing far-reaching practice, okay, in which the Bodhisattva's body, speech, and mind are refined. So, for example, in the very joyful, the first bhumi, what they practice is they have a surpassing practice of generosity. They're practicing all 10 perfections or far-reaching practices, but their practice of generosity really becomes quite powerful. It's called surpassing. Yeah. When they're on the second ground, their practice of ethical conduct becomes surpassing. Okay, so they're still practicing all 10, but that one's really gets some special kind of oomph and ability at that time. Okay? And then the fourth way that the grounds differ is the feature of the mode of taking fruitional rebirths. So on each successive ground, the bodhisattvas are able to take higher and higher levels of rebirth, in which they have more worldly power to be of benefit to sentient beings. Okay? So, they talk about, bodhisattvas taking different rebirths, because in social structures, different people have a different amount of influence, different amount of power. So if bodhisattvas can take rebirths as the people who society looks to more as their leaders or respects more or whatever, then that bodhisattva has a better ability to be of greater influence to more sentient beings. Okay, so for example, His Holiness was recognized as the Dalai Lama. Well, just by the force of that social convention, then he gets access and is able to benefit so many different sentient beings. Okay, so as you go through the different bodhisattva grounds, then you're able to take different kinds of rebirths that enable you to have more influence on a conventional level over sentient beings. Okay, so those are 4 ways that the grounds, the Mahayana grounds, are differentiated from each other. Okay. However, since there does not exist even a slight difference with regard to the mode of the 10 ultimate grounds seeing the pure nature, reality, okay, so there's no difference among the 10 grounds in terms of how they perceive the emptiness of true existence. Yeah, since that's the case, divisions are not made by way of differences of dissimilar entities, objects of observation, or aspects of those ultimate grounds. Okay, so all those ultimate grounds, they're the same nature. They're all the wisdom realizing emptiness directly. So they're not differentiated by their nature. They're not differentiated by their focal objects, their objects of meditation, because they're all focused on emptiness. Okay? And they're not differentiated by their aspects, because they're all perceiving emptiness directly and as it is. Okay? And then this is because the sutra on the 10 grounds, the Dasabhumika Sutra, which is part of the Avatamsaka Sutra. If you see in our library the Avatamsaka Sutra, a huge volume. So the sutra on the 10 grounds is one of the sutras in it. So there's a quote there that says, "Just as the wise cannot express or see the trail of any bird across the sky, so none of the grounds of conqueror children can be expressed. Then how can one listen?" Okay, so just as if you're wise, if there's a bird that flies across the sky, you can't see where it went, can you? You could have lots of birds flying across the sky, but they don't leave any trail behind them. There's absolutely nothing where you could say this is where that bird flew. So in the same way, in terms of the wisdom realizing emptiness of the 10 grounds, they're all perceiving the same emptiness, which is like there's no trail there. Okay, so they're all exactly the same in that respect. Okay. So too, none of the grounds of the conqueror children, i.e. the bodhisattvas, can be expressed. They can't be expressed in conventional terms because they're realizing emptiness. Okay, so if they can't be expressed, how can one listen? Okay. I find these quotations, kind of the way they put it in some kind of poetic analogies, quite helpful. It really makes you think. Because you look and like, okay, there's the ground, and the bird's over here, but there's nothing there where the bird went. So to that wisdom that's perceiving emptiness, there's nothing there. in terms of conventional objects, in terms of true existence, in terms of conceptual appearances. Yeah, all those things. It's just the lack of inherent existence. That's all. Yeah, so it gives you some kind of, feeling, and it's being realized non-dualistically. So you're not even having the feeling like, here I am and I'm realizing emptiness. There's not even that. Yeah, I find that quite difficult to imagine. Yeah? Can you imagine perceiving something non-dually without an appearance of you or your mind plus the object? I mean, I can't, what in the world does that feel like? And especially when what you're realizing non-dually is your very own nature and the nature of your mind. What in the world is that like? So one day we'll find out. Okay, but it can't be expressed, and so whoever does it first, the rest of us can't listen. Okay, can't talk about it in words. However, the Dasabhumika Sutra goes on. Differences between these ultimate grounds are explained in terms of gradual progression of a mere portion of those grounds. So a mere portion of those grounds, okay, the qualities of the grounds, the kind of rebirths that they can take, their ability to eliminate afflictions, the surpassing, far-reaching practice, those are portions of those grounds, and that's how you're differentiating them. Okay? So by progression of a mere portion of those grounds, by way of love, compassion, and aspirational prayers. Okay, so those are all things on the method side of the path, aren't they? But not in terms of objects of activity of the mind, because the objects of all those ultimate grounds is emptiness. They're all perceiving the same emptiness. It's not like, one perceives one emptiness that appears, this emptiness. We can talk of different emptinesses, but to the mind that is directly realizing them, there's no difference. So when we talk of first ground, second ground, and so on like that, that's our conceptual stuff that we're putting on it. But in terms of the experience of those grounds, it's the same. It's all the wisdom realizing emptiness. Okay? So, nonetheless, until the 10th ground, there is the difference of newly seeing a formerly not seen factor of freedom from adventitious defilements in terms of the pure nature reality. Okay, so what this means is when we're going up the different grounds, because each of the grounds has an ability to eliminate a different portion of the afflictions, so as you go through the grounds, you're attaining new true cessations, after with each uninterrupted path and each liberated path. Okay, remember we talked about uninterrupted and liberated paths that are, uninterrupted is cleansing and liberated is you've shut the door and it's completely gone, can't return. Actually, the uninterrupted, it's not cleansing, it's already gone, but it isn't, it's only with the liberated path that it can never return. Okay, but yeah, so we're going up and progressing in terms of that. And by eliminating different obscurations with each ground, you're getting a different true cessation. So even though, like when we talk of the Four Noble Truths, the third one is true cessation. We usually say true cessation, singular. It's actually true cessations. Okay, because there's many true cessations that we actualize on the path, because each time we eliminate that level of afflictions, we actualize a different true cessation. Now, true cessations are defined as the purification of the emptiness of a mind that has eliminated a certain portion of afflictions. Okay? So you have a mind that's eliminated a certain portion of afflictions. Okay. You have the emptiness of that mind, and that emptiness has been totally purified because that mind has been totally purified. So true cessations are emptinesses. Yeah. We often talk about true cessations. This gets into a big debate, but we also often talk about true cessations as the absence of, the elimination of a certain portion of the afflictions or other obscurations. Those are the true cessations. Then you wonder, but how can a true cessation be an emptiness? Okay, because even though true cessations, they're also non-affirming and negatives. They're the absence of those different level of afflictions. The afflictions are something that once existed, whereas in emptiness, it's the absence of inherent existence, and inherent existence never existed.
But afflictions never inherently existed.
No, but afflictions have conventionally existed.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah. So the true cessations, we usually talk about them, that they're the absence of certain afflictions that have been eliminated, so they can't. Yeah. Then how can they be emptinesses too? Yeah. So this is a topic they have a big debate on. Okay? Because emptinesses are just, nothing ever was inherently existent. Okay? So, but with true cessations, the afflictions that they're the opposite, that they're the absence of, those afflictions once did exist. Yeah? So it seems funny to say that true cessations are emptinesses.
But is this related to like dependent arising and emptiness coming to the same point?
Not really.
Okay.
Not really. Yeah. But here, the Prasangika, I can't say the Prasangika. I can say, this monastery and this commentator versus, Jitsumpa and Jamyang Shepa say, but Sonam Drakpa disagrees with them. Yeah. That true cessations are a kind of emptiness, because they're the emptiness of the mind that has eliminated a certain portion of afflictions. Okay, now if you look at it, you have, let's say you have Joe Blow's mind, and then you have an Arya Bodhisattva's mind. Okay, the emptiness of those two minds are both emptiness, right? If you perceive this one, Joe Blow's emptiness, the emptiness of Joe Blow's mind, and the emptiness of, the Arya Bodhisattva's mind, is the same emptiness in one way. In another way, we can conceptually speak of them as different. Experientially, they're the same, but we can speak of them as different because Joe Blow's emptiness is the emptiness of a mind with contamination, of a mind with affliction. Okay? Whereas the emptiness of the Arya Bodhisattva's mind is the emptiness of a mind that has eliminated some portion of the afflictions. So thinking about it that way, with that kind of conceptual viewpoint, they're different emptinesses. We conceptually can speak of them differently, even though experientially they're the same.
But is it, the emptiness is the same, but it's just the afflictions that One has less and one has
Yeah,
more. But
right.
The emptiness is the same.
The emptiness is the same, but the mind that it's the emptiness of is different.
Yeah.
So because the mind and the emptiness are one nature, if the mind is contaminated, the emptiness, even though in one way it's totally pure because it's empty of true existence, in another way it's not completely pure because it's the emptiness of a mind that's full of afflictions. Okay?
So it doesn't have the same quality?
Well, the emptiness from the viewpoint of direct perception has the same, it's just emptiness. But from the viewpoint of the mind that it's the emptiness of, it's different.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Okay? So here we're getting into, what you perceive in meditative equipoise between what you can talk about afterwards when your conceptual mind is working. Okay? Are you getting what I'm saying? Okay, like the emptiness of a boot and the emptiness of a hat. If you perceive those two emptinesses, they're undifferentiable. Okay? But from the viewpoint of our conceptual mind, one is the emptiness of a hat and one's the emptiness of a boot. So in that way, they're different, aren't they? Okay?
If the boot gets destroyed, the emptiness of that boot is destroyed, but the emptiness of the hat still exists.
Right. Yeah. So they're not, and from that viewpoint, they're not the same, even though experientially they are. Okay? So that's why we're talking about the different minds. So what's happening as you're going up the Bodhisattva grounds is, you're attaining these new true cessations because you're eliminating different levels of the afflictions. So the mind itself is becoming pure and purer. Yeah? So the emptiness of each of those minds is different from that perspective too, because it's the emptiness of a mind that is pure and pure and pure and pure. Okay? And so that emptiness is also getting purified in the same way that the mind is getting purified, even though the emptiness was never actually contaminated to start with, because it's emptiness. Okay?
It's very strange to talk about it like the emptiness is getting purer and purer.
Yeah, it sounds strange to talk about it that way. But when you think of it, that the emptiness is one nature with the object that it's the emptiness of.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, because you don't have the emptiness of Joe Blow's mind without Joe Blow's mind. Okay? So in that way, they're different. And so when it says, you're newly seeing a formerly not seen factor of freedom. So you're newly seeing a formerly not seen true cessation as you're going up and up, these different ones. Okay? So until the 10th ground, there's the difference of newly seeing a formerly not seen factor of freedom from adventitious defilements in terms of the pure nature reality. Okay? Yeah.
The Bodhisattva that comes, has a birth, even if say he's on his 9th ground, he will still have to work on emptiness.
Yeah.
He doesn't come right away with the emptiness.
Oh, okay.
At birth.
Okay. At birth, you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. As when somebody's an Arya Bodhisattva, I think that as they go from one birth to the next, there's probably some obscuration that happens, but they're not losing their realization of emptiness. Yeah. And by the time you hit the path of seeing, for bodhisattvas anyway, you can control the rebirth. Yeah. Okay. Before that, there's still, like dying and getting reborn. You lose a lot. And you have to kind of go back and study and meditate and things like that. But I would think for the Aryas, there's not much of that going on.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. For it is said that the exalted wisdom of meditative equipoise of the 10 grounds have greater and lesser vision in terms of directly realizing the true cessations which were obtained by the uninterrupted path of the lower grounds, and of not directly realizing the true cessations which will be attained by the uninterrupted paths of the higher grounds. Okay? In other words, those exalted wisdoms of meditative equipoise of the 10 grounds can be differentiated in that, like, of the one of the first ground, can see the true cessation of the objects to be abandoned by the first ground, but it can't see the true cessation of the objects being abandoned by the second ground. Okay, so it can that mind knows the emptiness of the mind of the first. The mind of the first ground, but it doesn't really know the emptiness of the mind of the second ground in terms of experientially, because it hasn't actualized that true cessation yet of the second ground. Okay? Is this good? Are you getting it? Yeah? Okay. So they're differentiated that way. Yeah. Okay. Still, the Tathagatas never move from meditative stabilization, which directly actualizes the complete perfect truth body, the factor of having abandoned the obstructions which are predispositions. Okay. So, although all the bodhisattvas can see some levels of true cessation, but not others, they can see the emptiness of the minds of, according to the level they're at, but not of the higher grounds. Yeah, the Buddhas who have actualized the perfect truth body have the mind that is completely free of all obscurations, and so they can see all of those true cessations, and they can see all of those, the emptiness of the mind that is completely purified of all obscurations. Okay? And then there is a quote by the element of qualities. Okay, just as the crescent moon is seen to increase day by day, similarly those abiding on the grounds also are seen to increase in stages. On the 15th day of the waxing moon, the moon becomes complete. Similarly, on the completion of the grounds, the truth body is fully manifest. Okay? So just as the crescent moon increases day by day, that's like the mind having more and more true cessations, so it's like more and more of the true cessations of the really pure emptiness of the mind is being revealed. Yeah, so just as that happens in stages, and then on the 15th day you have the perfectly full moon, and everything's visible. So in the same way, the truth body, the Dharmakaya, and here I think it's talking about the nature truth body, the emptiness of inherent existence of the Buddha's mind, that is the ability to see that is increasing as the bodhisattvas go through the stages, because that bodhisattva's conventional mind is getting purer and purer of the different layer of afflictions, and there's actualizing greater and greater levels of true cessations. Okay? In Guy's book, The Two Truths, there's a section on this. Yeah, so you might want to take a look at it. Yeah, because there's a big debate about it. Okay, any questions? Yeah.
I'm wondering if it makes any sense to try to understand this thing about purification of emptiness by thinking about the two truths in the sense of emptiness is a dependent arising. Like it's a conventionality. I'm wondering if it makes any sense to think of it that way.
Emptiness is an ultimate truth.
Right. Emptiness is an ultimate truth, but
It is one nature with a conventional truth. Each emptiness is one nature with the conventional truth that it's the emptiness of. So as that conventional truth, for example, that mind, changes and becomes pure and pure, its emptiness also gets purified. Okay? Because the two truths are one nature. Okay? If the two truths were different natures, then they would be completely unrelated. Then the mind could get purified, the emptiness, nothing would happen to it.
that makes sense. But I can't figure out how to even say the words now about
Good. We'll think about it, and then next time we can. You can ask it, okay? Yeah.
Well, I have kind of a question that comes up, like how do things happen to a non-affirming negative?
Yes, that's what seems so strange, is how can a non-affirming negative change? And if emptiness is is emptiness of inherent existence, how can that emptiness change? So that's why I'm saying, from the viewpoint of the direct perception of emptiness, nothing's changing. But from the viewpoint of talking about that emptiness conceptually as the emptiness of a certain mind, then we can divide it into different things.
It's kind of like turning to a different channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, that helps me. It's like, we just turned to a different channel, looking at the same issue, but we're on a different channel.
Right, yeah. Okay. So because the mind is more purified than its emptiness.
Yeah. From that channel's perspective.
Yeah.
But then whenever we talk about emptiness and say this is changing and that's changing,
Yeah.
the mind just goes...
Right, because emptiness itself doesn't change.
Right.
Yeah.
It just seems...
So from the viewpoint of it being an ultimate truth, it's not changing at all.
Right. It's very mysterious.
Yeah. From the viewpoint of just how we talk about things, then we say that the emptiness of a hat is different than the emptiness of a boot, and the emptiness of one mind is different than the emptiness of another mind. So if that mind is pure, then that emptiness is, But if you think about it, from the viewpoint of a bodhisattva who's on the higher level, because they've eliminated more afflictions, then even though they're perceiving the same emptiness as they perceived before, something's going to be different in their experience of that emptiness, because the mind perceiving it is purified. Even though at the time of meditative equipoise, they say that the mind's completely pure. It's not even influenced by the latencies of ignorance, let alone ignorance, at the time of meditative equipoise. So even though at that viewpoint they're all the same in being the grounds and being, minds of meditative equipoise, directly realizing emptiness. But when they come out of that meditative equipoise, the true cessations that those minds have are different. Yeah, and those minds are different because some are more pure than others. So if you think about it from the experience of a mind that is more purified, when it goes into meditative equipoise, it's got to be different than a mind that isn't quite as purified. Even though they're both perceiving the same emptiness, there's still got to be some difference there. And even though both of them are you know, non-polluted minds. Okay, so to me what it's doing is it's getting us to see that we can't just talk about things in nice, neat little categories, like this is meditative equipoise, and that's totally different than the mind that comes afterwards. Well, in one way they're totally different, but in another way they're in the same continuum, aren't they? So, you know, what happens before that mind of meditative equipoise is going to make a difference. What happens afterwards, you know, it's going to be different from having realized that. Yeah.
In each moment, the emptiness that is arising due to the existence of that moment of mind is changing.
Yeah, but in one way the emptiness doesn't change, but from the viewpoint of our conceptual mind that says moment of mind number 1, moment of mind number 2, moment of mind number 3, then you have the emptiness of moment of mind number 1, you have 3 different emptinesses. But that's from the viewpoint of us making conceptual distinctions. Yeah, but that's not from the viewpoint of what emptiness is,
Right.
and how it's perceived by a reliable cognizer directly perceiving it.
Right.
But emptiness itself is empty.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
That's why that
Can't
couldn't happen that way.
Hmm.
Or else it would be one monolithic thing.
I'm not getting what you're
Like when
saying.
when you're talking about this, I'm still back on the purifying of emptiness.
Uh-huh.
All these mind, the basis is changing.
Right.
But I think it's what makes that hard is because we think that emptiness itself is inherently existent.
Right.
So every time we try to flip along with it,
Uh-huh.
holding this thing that we're trying to carry along.
Exactly. I think that's one of the problems. Is this, we can see as soon as we start with conceptualizing things, we go right into thinking that they're inherently existent. Yeah. Okay. So I hope this stretches the mind a little bit. Yeah? And it gives us some different feeling about what, you know, what are bodhisattvas perceiving anyway? Yeah.
But you know, the more that I hear about these teachings, then the whole idea of the mind, the omniscient mind of a Buddha becomes more and more possible.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know, when you see the capacity of the mind to do what it's doing as it's going along these paths, you say, wow, of course the Buddha would have an omniscient mind when he got to that place, because of look at all of what you're doing to get there.
Right. Yeah. It's like if you look at a dirty cloth and you watch it being washed once and twice and 3 times, you get an idea of what the clean cloth might be like. Yeah.
You know, when you talk about you're at a place like you just want to practice, like there's nothing else, that's what you want to do,
Mm-hmm.
being a Bodhisattva and all of that. Like, can you reach that before having emptiness?
You mean
Or you reach emptiness and then you develop that desire to
just practice, make your whole life the Dharma? I think, you know, my guess is that you can get to the point where you just want to make your whole life the Dharma every single moment. You can do that before you realize emptiness. Of course, after you realize emptiness, that determination, that aspiration is going to be much, much stronger.
I think that's what I meant by that.
Yeah.
There's no, okay, and give up. You just go on.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think even when you have very strong renunciation or bodhicitta, once it's stable, you're not going to give up either. But once you've realized emptiness, then you're really getting a taste of the chocolate cake. You know? So
Just the pictures in the magazine.
right, not just the pictures in the magazines. You're getting a taste. So you're really jazzed at that point. Yeah. Okay.
May
spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Losang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. In the snowy mountain pure land, you're the source of good and happiness. Powerful Tenzin Gyatso Chenrezig, may you stay until samsara ends. May the deeds of explaining and practicing the Dharma, done by groups supporting the teachings and their upholders, who spread the view of dependent arising and non-violent actions in the 10 directions, and especially at Sravasti Abbey in the West Florida.